We're going to get started if people can get settled. Great. It's great to see you all. Some familiar faces, some new faces. I love it. There's some amazing star artist power in this room right now. The folks that are in the exhibition, the folks that are friends of the folks in the exhibition. It's just an honor to be in this space and to share it with you all. Those of you that are here who know who these artists are, you know what I'm saying. So it's great, an honor to get to collaborate with Ginger Dunhill. This has been really a dream collaboration that's been in the making for about 3 years. I apologize to those of you who were here for the earlier performance. You're hearing me say this twice, but that's okay, you get to hear me twice. So the exhibition itself includes not only this incredibly exciting slate of programs, it also includes a wonderful catalog that you can see in the bookstore or purchase in the bookstore, and of course the exhibition itself. So please come back often and enjoy the various programs that we'll be presenting here in the museum. We're really proud of being able to do that work with Ginger over the course of the exhibition. I invite you also to spend a lot of time in the exhibition because each of these artists is doing incredible work. They're telling their own stories, they're engaging with each other, they're sharing the activism that they are all creating within and participating in their own communities. They're also asking us to come on a journey with them and to dream about a different world, to think about what the world could be, and also to reveal some hard truths about the current world that we live in. And so the power of the exhibition is very much about that interconnectedness, about their friendships with each other and their willingness to share that with us. It's pretty rare that the artists bring their own personal stories that impacts the work that they're presenting in the exhibition. So before I hand it over to Ginger and Cannupa, I have to say that I don't have to do a big, long talk today, which is amazing, because that's usually what my job is. So I'm going to hand it over to Ginger and Cannupa and the artist Ginger will introduce. And I do have to do a few thank yous. Thanks to Shell and Elsa, who are here from the City of Albuquerque Arts and Culture Department. This exhibition was generously funded also by the Andy Warhol Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts. Ginger Hendricks is here with us, who is our grant writer. Something I really want to brag about is that we were able to provide some funding to all of the artists who participated in the exhibition, and it was made possible because of those grant dollars. So thank you, Ginger, wherever you are, wave at us. Ginger Dunhill and I felt that that was a really important part of our curatorial process in working on this exhibition, was finding ways to also create this kind of programming and to make sure that we were that the artists were also getting paid. So without further ado, I have one more important thing. Sorry about that. I have to thank our museum staff. Andres Martinez has been here working with us on our programming as well. An absolute huge thank you and hugs and all the things for Magali Jimenez, who kept us organized. Literally, I don't know how many hundreds of emails and Zooms and all the things, but she kept us connected in big ways. And also a huge thanks to William Gassaway, who's our assistant art curator. So with all that said, I will now hand it over to Ginger and Cannupa.
Check, check, check. Woo! Hi, hello, thank you all so much for being here. I'm Ginger Dunhill, and this is Cannupa Hanska Luger. I am the creator and host of Broken Boxes podcast, and Cannupa is my husband, my creative bestie, and also a recurring host on the project in the past 4 years. So we put each other to work. I'm his studio director also. So in the spirit of eliminating toxic individualism, we really intertwine everything and support each other. But I'm so excited to have so many dear friends here who are going to join us on stage, and we're going to let them introduce themselves. So we have Jeremy Dennis, we have Amarayllis R. Flowers, Tanya Aguiniga, Guadalupe Maravilla. So if you all want to come on up, and then we'll just let you all kind of introduce yourselves. A big part of this project is in artists' own voices. So that's something that even Josie and I tried to do in this whole exhibition, is not insert a curatorial narrative onto these artists, but let their work and their voices be at the forefront. So we're just gonna have a really unconventional roundtable conversation. We have some tricks up our sleeves, and this is also a live Broken Boxes podcast episode. We're gonna make a little circle.
Okay, so far away.
And there's a mic there.
Microphone?
Yeah, whoever wants to start, whoever has the mic, I guess.
Oh, I'll start. Dosha Maragua, Dishgagnahudosha Netwehudosha Cannupa Hanska Luger. It's been a great honor to work alongside Ginger. And this Broken Boxes podcast has always been just this like pivotal moment in my experiences navigating the world, and all the wonderful people who I end up meeting. I have a problem with being just like totally entangled in proximity. So the people who I'm closest to are my best friends. And right now, these are my best friends. But Ginger has been doing this podcast and interviewing folks who I had met, and people who we've already known. And there's something really beautiful about the maintenance of this kinship that has been developed. And I think it exists on Broken Boxes podcast. I think we've all kind of met each other in different places. Actually, today was the first day that I physically got to touch Jeremy Dennis, which is amazing. Been a fan of Jeremy's work for a while now. And but you know, these sorts of opportunities are the opportunities that bring us all together. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you, Ginger, for creating these opportunities and to build the relationships that we have. And I think you see it in the exhibition as well. So thank you very much. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Check, check. My name is Amarayllis Flowers, and I used to live in Santa Fe, and that's where I got to know Ginger and Cannupa, and where our friendship first started, and a lot of other people who are here today. And it's just such a blessing to be here. You know, I might just be hungry, but someone's been a little teary-eyed. So yeah, it just is like really, really an honor. And Ginger, thank you so much for all of the work that you do and that you've been doing, and all of the space that you hold, and the kind of friend that you are. It's so reflected in this show. It's reflected on this stage with everyone and in this space. So I'm so grateful to be in a museum that feels like a gathering of dear friends. And yeah.
Hi, everybody. Oh, is this mic check? Mic check. I'll use this one. Hi, everybody. My name is Tanya Aguiniga, and I, too, am so excited to be here with everybody. Yeah, and just so grateful to be in community with so many amazing people that not only make incredible work, but are also really incredible humans. So yeah, this is just such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, guys.
Hi. I'm also honored to be here with these amazing people and artists here that I bonded with over the years. Thank you all for coming today on this beautiful day. It's being here. I primarily work with art, but also healing is a big part of what I do. And I mainly focus with the undocumented community and the cancer community. Obviously, I expand past that. I go further with the work that I'm doing. But yeah, that's like my mission, and I believe that my art is the Trojan horse to healing, because people get interested in the visuals of it, and then they realize how much work we all have to do together as a group, but also individually. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Dennis. I'm also so grateful to be here. Such an honor. Meeting so many amazing people. So happy that this exhibit exists. I'm a visual artist and photographer from the Shinnecock Indian Nation in Southampton, New York. And a lot of the work that I do just brings visibility to our nation, trying to overtake the Hamptons and bring more attention to Shinnecock.
Okay, so we've come up with a plan. I'm such a fan of talking with people rather than at people. So I think this is a fun game of questions in a hat. I think I want you all to also consider these questions. Maybe some of your questions will be answered, maybe not. There is a chance that you can ask something at some point along the way, but we have a pile of them, and we will discard them if we don't like them, just so you know. So first off, I just want to blindly pull a question out of the hat.
And whoever feels moved to answer it, please step up.
This is quite a way to start it. What scares you the most? That was my son Seisha's question. When I'll grab another one. We're going to keep that one on deck. Let's warm up to what scares you the most. Have you ever seen a ghost?
Yes.
Was that EO?
That was you.
Oh, that was me. Okay. Oh, y'all really did take that and put it in your pocket. I'm curious.
I've seen plenty, so I don't know where to start.
Yeah. I've seen a ghost. I have a story of one specific moment. I was working at a hotel in Seattle, and it was this place called the Moore Hotel. It's got a music theater attached to it. So there's like a music event in the center, and I used to work there. Whoops. I used to work there, and whoa, sorry. I was going upstairs, up these old stairs, and I watched. I was looking down because I have big feet, and whenever I walk on stairs, I have to make sure that I'm landing them properly. And a shadow casts, across the front of my view. I didn't think about it. 3 steps up, I'm at the top of the stairs, and I'm in the long hallway, long corridor, and there was nothing there. I was like, okay, this hotel has got specters. Yeah, that's one instance. Here, can I give that to you? Does anybody want to share a story with that, or shall we move on to another question?
You're just gonna answer all.
I know.
Let's get into some art.
Okay. All right, here we go. How does material impact your process? What is your favorite material?
I would like to hear from Tanya on this one because of your implication with craft.
So I am a craft-based artist, which means that I mostly like to work with fiber and with ceramics, but I kind of veer in and out of other things, and my formal education is in woodworking. And for me, yeah, just materials have so much history, and they, can help us have a starting point that's like non-hierarchical for the most part, especially when it's craft-based materials, because like in fiber, we all constantly, as soon as we come out of our mother's wombs, are wrapped in fiber. So we have already so many different, connections to the material world. And so, yeah, for me, it's just a really exciting starting point to figure out ways of involving anywhere from like a 2-year-old to like someone that's in their 90s in feeling empowered in art making, in visibility, in making their voices known, and kind of breaking how we get involved in art. That it's really important for me to help people understand that you don't just have to go to school to be an artist. We all are born artists. We all inherently make meaning in things.
Yeah. So for me, I think I work with many different types of materials, but really important for me, it's the communities that I work with. A big part of my work is to actually go back to Mexico and Central America and retrace my migration route that I had as a child when I migrated by land for 2.5 months. And I go back there as an adult to these lands. And originally I started going to these places as a place to heal, to confront these places of trauma, right? And eventually I started bringing objects for my shrines, and eventually for my sculptures and so on. But when I was doing this work, I started connecting with people in those places, and I started creating microeconomies in those places of trauma with the museum and the budgets from the budgets of the museums. I started creating my own microeconomies, and these microeconomies had turned into like lifelong friendships with the people that I work with. So for me, like the material goes beyond just the physical object, right? But it is about the relationships that I build along the way.
I will say, I will say that for me, materials feel really important because they have their own history before I even touch them, and a lot of other people have touched them, and I don't even know where they've been, but I do know how I interact with them most of the time in the world. And so a lot of the materials that I use are materials that mark people, myself and other people in my community, as other or as disposable or as femme or unintelligent or too much or something to be trashed. And I use those materials as something that's really that I want to center and uplift and treat them with the respect that I want all of my people to be treated. And then also similar to what you were saying as well, is like I'm always trying to get back to that feeling of when I was when I knew that art belonged to me, and like everyone, all the other kiddos around me, we knew that it just was ours and it belonged to us. And so like a lot of that introduction for me was like YMCA, after school, that kind of stuff, and a lot of it was craft materials and construction paper and glue and glitter and charms, beads, macaroni, all of those kinds of things, and shaving cream. And funny enough, I just learned, hot tip, if you mix glue and shaving cream together, it makes puff paint, and that's in the, yeah, it's really fun. That's in the map out there.
Well, I'm not a craft artist, but I do digital photography, so I'm going to try to answer what's my favorite medium. I would say the land, just because in the Hamptons, having access to land is such a contested thing. So there's beaches that are privatized, ancestral territories that have been developed. So I think we take it for granted, the places that we drive by and places that look beautiful, you don't necessarily have them as a material, as an artist. So I'm trying to always think about ways of accessing these sites and trying to question why, especially indigenous people, no longer can have that connection, and trying to resolve that.
There's only two left.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's just making me think really quickly about the work in the exhibition, as you all are talking about. And Tanya, you created work for other artists in this exhibition, and I wanted to talk a little bit about each of your works in the show, but let's start there. Like, what was your, when we brought the invitation to be a part of this show, what what were you called to do?
So I tend to make really large, heavy things. And so my studio is filled with a lot of unsold, large, heavy things. And, you know, I think most of us, when we get invited to do a museum show, we want to put our best foot forward, and so then we end up making something gigantic. And so I just didn't want to be burdened with being part of this whole system and like capitalist economy. And so I thought about how sad it was that none of us have each other's work, and nor can we afford each other's work. And so I really wanted, and then I also do a lot of mutual aid work. I've been doing migrant aid work for 27 years. And so I immediately thought about, you know, I can make something of value, and I really like thinking about people that are going to be living with the things that I make, and I like kind of like channeling what would make them happy. And so I immediately thought about, because Lupe and I have worked in doing mutual aid together often. That's how we can cover both coasts. And so I thought, okay, you know, and in the years of our friendship, he also talks about his future child often with me. And so then I kept thinking like, okay, I want to make gifts for friends so that I can think about and spend time, you know, with the beauty of that friendship and who that person is and the work that they make, and the intention in the communities that they work with. And so then I wanted to give, it was hard because I only made gifts for 3 friends that are in the show. And so I reached out to each of them, and then I told them, I'm gonna make a gift for you for this exhibition. You can either have something that you can sell so that you can use it for mutual aid with the communities that you work with. You can choose something that's for yourself, or you can choose something that's for your children. And yeah, everybody chose something for themselves, which is which is okay, you know?
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So,
God.
yeah, so everyone chose themselves. And so it was really interesting to see, yeah, like what it was that people asked for. And I think people were kind of shocked, like, oh shit, like you're gonna make something for me, like there's all this pressure. And so Cannupa was the first one that, that called me back. And,
I really wanted something for myself.
yeah. And so it was sweet because he was like, well, I want 2 things. And so he was like, I want it to feel like a collaboration. So I want to send you something that I made, and then you make something with it, but you make 2 of them, one for you, one for me. And so it was really sweet thinking about our friendship as well, and thinking that our 2 pieces are never whole unless they're together. And that then I also get to live with one of my pieces, which I have not gotten to live with one of my pieces.
It's our pieces.
Our pieces.
I know you
yes.
did a lot of work on it, but
Yes. And so, but in like working through all of this stuff, the museum was so gracious and patient to let me next day the pieces the day before the install. So they also didn't know, and they haven't gotten the full list of what all the pieces mean and what everything is that's in them. But like with Cannupa, I ended up founding a trauma-informed ceramic studio for LGBTQ asylum seekers in Tijuana. And so now we're on our 4th year. Now we're working with 3 different LGBTQ asylum shelters. We have a therapist at every class. It's this really incredible program. And it was started by me and Cannupa going down, freeing 700 pounds of clay into Mexico.
liberating.
Liberating, yes, the 700 pounds of clay. And then me taking Cannupa to the shelters so that he could understand what it is that so I'm from Tijuana, so he could understand what my community goes through. And so with that, we discovered that, clay has such a therapeutic effect, and it's something that everyone can get, some relief from. If you're a child, if you're, you don't even have to make anything with it. And so then that's how I started this program. And so then in Cannupa and my piece, there's hands. Yeah, he hasn't seen it yet. But there's two hands that are reaching out for each other. And each of those hands is someone that was either in asylum or refugee process, waiting to come to the U.S. So it was in all of them kind of thinking, and yeah, Lupe was like, oh, I know exactly what I want. I want something for protection in my house. And so then, because he was going through a difficult time health-wise, I got extra worried. So then I went really extra and made him a 40-foot rosary. Yeah. So I mean, because I wanted it to start at his door and go all the way to the bathroom through all the rooms. But I've studied a lot of like Mesoamerican curanderismo and shamanism. And so in all of the objects and the materials is embedded just like a great amount of care and of thought for Lupe's wellness and protection. Yeah, and then, Castles, who unfortunately was not able to make it, but we miss them and we think of them. Castles asked for 2 phone calls a year. And so I was like, no, that's not, you can't do that. I will just call you more than that. But yeah, Castles had been moving a lot in the last year, from the US, from LA to New York, New York to Canada, Canada to New York, and then to Canada again, and then back to New York. And so I didn't want to overburden them with something really big because I didn't know what their living situation was. But they were really sad about like missing their community and friends in LA. And I live in LA and my studio's in front of the LA River. So I go down to the river almost every day and collect round stones because I really like collecting material remnants of labor. And so I usually grab bricks that have been turned into perfect circles and all these different things. So when you go in, you'll see Castle's piece is actually made out of 2 pieces of cement and 1 piece of asphalt that was ground down into perfect circles by the LA River. And so I really wanted them to feel the support of their community in LA, but also to have a little piece of LA with them. And so then I told them, oh, I have a dream of making you a weighted blanket, but because you keep moving, if I make you this thing, do you want it to be necklace size, vest size, or scarf size? And so then they were like, oh my God, like a necklace for like trans protection. And so then that's where the larger stones, and then 2 of them are removable so you can throw them at people. so yeah, so that's where those guys, yeah.
It would be great, actually, if you could all kind of talk about your pieces as a part of the conversation that's taking place in the room next to us. If you can just give us a little bit of an intro, same way, about your work.
Well, in my introduction, I failed to mention I'm also the lead artist of an art nonprofit called Ama's House. It's on the Shinnecock Reservation. And so in the distant room, as part of the Broken Boxes exhibit, I have basically our logo. It's the front facade of Ama's House. So it's the brightest red you can get at the store, same color and everything. And in each of the windows, we have different kind of family photos, artwork that was inspired by some of the artists who have spent time with us. Since August 2021, we've hosted about 46 artists of color throughout the nation, all mediums. And we have work by Malika Dave, Demarcus Megaugi, and we have another illustration of Ma by Alma Lepla. So they have a couple of different pieces that represent what Ma's house looks like, who Ma is. And we also have some takeaways. So if you do want to learn more about our project, you can take some of the brochures. So we also have a podcast as well. So inspired by Ginger and all the inspiring interviews that she has led. But I also have a piece to the left of the mural as well, which is part of the work that I do, just bringing activism to some of our sacred sites that have been desecrated through mansions being built upon them. So I'll probably leave it at that.
For me, the sculpture that I'm showing here is part of my Disease Thrower series, which are sculptures that are shrines and healing instruments. And originally it was made for exhibition in Germany. Then it went to the Sao Paulo Biennial, where I feel like every time I activate the sculptures in ceremonies, it picks up energy from all those interactions with the people that are there. And if you see one of the gongs on the right, there's actually a little child's handprint on it. And at some point in Brazil, a little kid went up to it and touched it and kind of left the imprint of their hand. The museum staff was worried that they couldn't wipe it off. I was like, no, leave it. And somehow it just stayed in there. So it's like one of those beautiful things that it picks up the energy for everywhere that it's going. And then behind it, it's a mural drawing. And it's actually a childhood drawing game called Tripachuca from El Salvador that I grew up playing. That actually played with someone that the museum was invited me to participate here. And it's a collaboration drawing. So basically, when you show up, the wall is painted a specific color, and then we just have these markers, and we start playing this numbers game, and it starts to form a pattern between two people. And this game is really important for my practice because it's a childhood game that I used to play when I was during the Civil War with other kids. It was a way to interact. And now that my work is traveling and I'm traveling, it feels like it's really important for me to connect with someone who is formally undocumented from the area or someone who's a cancer survivor like myself. So when I was in Gwangju in Korea last year, I played with someone who had defected from North Korea. In Brazil, for Sao Paulo, I played with someone who was from Ghana, that was a refugee, and so on. So like every time I travel, again, it's connecting with the communities that are in those lands. So that's the connection. So that's pretty much, there's a million details in the work, but I'll just say that.
I really love maps a lot. I've loved maps for a really long time, mostly because I love drawing, and drawing for me has always been like a blueprint for everything else that I might make. It's like always where I start, and it's always where I return to. But I love seeing where drawing just operates in the world, where it's not necessarily like in an art context. And to me, maps are really beautiful visually, but also poetic. And so I was I was like curious about maps that favor being lost as like a navigational tool. So I was really into labyrinths for a minute, but simultaneously my whole life I'm a really big fantasy nerd, sci-fi and fantasy, but mostly fantasy. And so for any other fantasy nerds in the house, you know that fantasy, that fantasy maps are really important to building a world and building a story. And so for me, fantasy, you know, it's like has this reputation of being a genre of escapism and as a way to kind of like check out of reality and as something that's frivolous. But for me, fantasy's always been not a means to escape, but a means to stay, to be able to sit with what it is that we're actually living through and to like have the audacity to imagine something different or to attempt to describe what we're actually experiencing that we don't have language for. And so I wanted to make a fantasy map, and I wanted to make a fantasy map that centered being lost and that also centered my community, and that centered that where the whole world, the iconography is all, you know, thick, BIPOC, femme, earthbound, mythical, and also down on our luck, and also super hopeful, and just like both being exactly where we're at and really, really searching for what's possible.
And also in the spirit of our life, me and Cannupa, he's also in the exhibition as an artist, and I know that can be a little bit interesting to think about, but Cannupa was the second person I ever interviewed on the podcast, and so in honoring that lineage of how he went from being kind of an artist that I practiced, like how to even do a podcast. This was 10 years ago before, it was like This American Life and The Moth, but there was nothing existing for artists to speak to each other, so I kind of practiced on him as my interviewee. And he's gone on to move into this role of actually like facilitating with me. But I thought if I'm doing a 10-year celebration of the exhibition, having his artwork present and represented was really important to me. So in this exhibition, he has two different bodies of work. One is two teepee skins that are from his Hostile Territory series, and one is a collection of assemblage speakers that make no noise from his Speechless series. So before we move on to like the next question, I just wanted Cannupa to speak a little bit about Speechless.
She tried to hook me up here. So Speechless was an exhibition that we didn't think was going to travel. And we were both kind of burdened with labor, getting the show ready, doing all this stuff. And she was like, well, we'll just put in one of the pieces from Speechless. And then Speechless got picked up and traveled. So then I was sitting there like, oh, I've got to make an entire wall of sound. A noiseless sound. Speechless was a concept that was based on like what is the artist's role in the museum, and that was kind of my question. You know, I was like, I feel like a virtue signal, you know, for the future. I try to tell people and talk to, you know, you can talk to your curator, you can talk to your director, but does it ever get to the point of where the rubber hits the road in the concept of a museum? And I was like, it feels like I'm making all of this sound, but nobody's listening. And so the speakers exist as a noiseless stack of speakers. And I was like, you can be loud and say nothing. And so these objects kind of hold that space. Can I jump into a question? Yeah. Okay. So I'm not pulling from the hat. There's something that's really kind of interesting that's kind of a tether through all of this. And I'd love to hear all of your kind of like insight on it, because these are, you know, we have conversations one-on-one, but it's nice to have all of us in one space and to kind of like groupthink. There is this reoccurring narrative around our relationship to place. And I think that might be one of the like most important questions there are in human society. You know, like how do we belong? Where do we belong? What's our relationship to the land? You know, so I would be really interested in. I know we kind of touched on it, each of you in different ways, but if there was a way to, is this something that often comes up in your work collectively? I know it does for me, and I would be really interested, selfishly, what your perspectives are on that.
So for me, I like constantly try to not make work about the border, but because it continuously is something, you know, that everybody talks about or points to or scapegoats for different political situations in like all countries, then I constantly have to go back to it, and I try as much as I can to, like when I do public speaking in, you know, with groups of young folks, to like let them know like, hey, like we're ready for you to take on the baton. Like we're ready to pass it. Like a bunch of us are getting older. Like you can do it too. This is how you can do it. But sadly, I think because of my lived experience with the border, I don't see a lot of people picking up the heavy loads. And so then I constantly have to return to it and return to it in louder, sadly, sometimes more painful ways for myself. And yeah, and kind of just bring a platform and voice to the voiceless by collaborating with communities, by traveling through a lot of areas that are not that safe for people to travel, but just because I really believe in the work that I'm doing on the border in terms of humanitarian rights, it just, yeah, you just kind of have to keep going. And but you know, I'm also really blessed to have made it this far to where I can be on a stage talking about border issues with a bunch of people that maybe didn't think they were going to talk about it today.
So the question was about belonging and space. Well, I'm a big, I guess, history fan, I should say. So with the Shinnecock Nation, when we first made contact with the English Europeans, 1640, this changes between nations, but we made space for the early arrivals. And so we weren't ever clashing. We didn't really have physical violent wars, as you would imagine. But I always think back to that hundreds of years ago, that moment of contact, and how we made a proposal for coexistence, and how in the 21st century, how my community tries to thwart that idea of we not belonging in today's world. And so there's issues of substance abuse to deal with that, to alleviate those issues of belonging. There's issues of, we do have a small tribal territory, but being here today in New Mexico, away from home, is a uncommon thing for Shinnecock people to be traveling, to be taking up space, to be telling our story. And so I'm trying to always think about ways other tribal members can see themselves out in the world, making a difference, and trying to undo that simple negative image of ourselves that we don't belong in today's world. So it is a lot of just trying to think about space in terms of, like, where should we be? And in my case, I think we should be everywhere. We should be celebrated everywhere.
For me, my relationship to land is like thinking about where the people are, especially with the work that I do with the mutual aid work and the food justice work and the healing work. I live in New York City, and for some reason I love that place, but I feel like I need to sometimes escape. But it keeps calling me back because I understand the need that is there. So I think that's the relationship that I have, or anywhere else that I'm traveling to, right? It feels like I always see who's in need and what's going on in these lands, and to me, that's my relationship to land, and it's like that's my way to kind of connect to it, right, with the people that are in these places.
I grew up moving around my whole life, mostly in the U.S., kind of constantly all along the East Coast, down south, and Midwest. And something that taught me was just that all of the things that we think are for certain are not, that especially things that we believe are fixed about ourselves or other people are in constant flux, and that people's perspectives constantly change. Even within the US, every single town and every single region and every single city, there's like a whole set of cultural values that inform how we see each other and how we understand our place in the world. And so where I find a sense of place and where I find a sense of belonging is with people. It's wherever my people are, that's where place is for me. And it's really special being back here, because actually Santa Fe was the first place that I lived anywhere long enough to like feel oriented to a place. And so being back here, it's like this feeling where I'm like, oh, I know where my body is in space, and I never had that. And so this place actually feels like a second home, and it's also, it's where so many, like wherever my people are, that's where place is.
Thank you for sharing that, everyone. It's really interesting to kind of learn about more and more threads that connect all the work together and all the people together, because it started initially already as a community, and it just feels like the layers are so much deeper, and I'm excited to see what happens next, even as the relationships form through this exhibition. There's two key points that Josie actually brought up when we were curating this, and she's definitely mentored me through the process of a museum exhibition. So I just wanted to say thank you to Josie really quickly, and I definitely think she kind of shifted the game of what the Albuquerque Museum is even capable of doing. But the two themes were disruption and survival, and how those seem so like polarized, but how they actually go hand in hand for artists in general, and especially the artists in this exhibition, who are disrupting what normal is and what we're supposed to be prescribed, and to be, how to exist and how we're supposed to exist. And then survival, how to survive in a world that isn't necessarily built for us or for our communities. And so those two themes are really important parts of the exhibition, even though we didn't curate the show based on themes, because we wanted the artists' voices to be at the forefront, and it's kind of led by the artists and their work. Those two themes are really important to us as curators. And with that, and also in light of my podcast, we always end with like a gathering of tools for our toolkits. Like how do we survive the art world? How do we survive in situations in societies that are constantly like putting our backs up against the wall? So if each of you could take your time to share with this community here in this podcast that will be broadcast afterwards, some insight or information that you might be able to share with artists or people in communities like yours who are struggling to find their footing and find their place. What would you put in your survival toolkit? And then we'll open it up to question and answer.
What? Okay, I'll start us off. I think just imagining something that doesn't exist, this notion that you bring up, it's absolutely pivotal. We exist in this current time where we're limited by our options, right? It's like there's a line drawn in the sand, choose a side. You like Pepsi, you like Coke. There's all of this like duality in choosing, and I'm like, dude, my choices don't exist. Like, I want to imagine something that is not an option. This is why I like working in futurism. It is a sort of speculative fiction, and what I think I recognized, and as a tool for everybody else, is a word that I was recently kind of found in the lexicon, hyperstition, which is the hyperstition is the self-fulfilling prophecy generated through an idea's spread and exposure. So hyperstition is like how submarines became a thing after Jules Verne imagined them into the world. We collectively moved towards these things becoming real. And I think that there's something really powerful in that, and I think as a tool for our audiences, for the people who engage with my work, for my community, I'm like, we can dream of things, and those travel through time. You might not be able to experience it in your present, but those dreams become manifest, and they become manifest by our collective agreement to have that become. So dream away. Nothing is impossible.
let's see. I'm gonna go micro. For artists or anyone else that might find it useful, something that I came to this year, so it's a more recent tool and realization, is trusting myself and trusting my brain and trusting my hands when I can't trust my brain. um, yeah, it's all connected. But yeah, I think I, like all of us, internalized a lot of ideas and pressures about how I should operate and what I should contribute, and in what time and at what scale, and the level of productivity, and a lot of like work that was from the outside in. And I think especially this year, I mean, I think we've all been feeling it in different ways, but as like our collective, I guess I'm just like, yeah, it's like it all, like literally, nothing is ever promised. Tomorrow isn't promised. And so it really helps clarify what really matters. And all of that kind of falls away. And I guess the tool part of it is like trusting my own timing instead of having to be on the time that I've inherited. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
It's funny because I'm also going to say trust. That's something I want to share too about adding that to the toolkit. And for me, like I'm really thinking about it as obviously trusting your gut, but that's like with everything. Like obviously the gestures that I make in the studio, but also trusting my friendships and my relationships with people are also a part of that. But also trusting just that everything's gonna be okay, just having that faith. You know, when we talk about healing, I talk about like trusting yourself. No matter what diagnosis any medical doctor gives you, you're gonna say, I'm gonna heal, and you're gonna heal. That's where it starts first. Because once you stop believing in that, then it's just not gonna, it's really hard to overcome whatever obstacle you have. So trusting yourself in everything, right? So that's what I would like to add to.
I think for me, I think a lot about rules, and I think a lot about human constructs. Yeah, I asked Cannupa yesterday, like twice in a very short span, if we were gonna get in trouble for doing what we were doing, which was just having a cigarette. But I think a lot about rules, and I think a lot about, yeah, like human constructed boundaries and limitations and like modalities of navigating all these worlds that we create. And I really honestly believe in us giving ourselves permission constantly to push back against that stuff. And if you think of something amazing, like for me, I think the biggest advice would be to try to actually make it happen. Because I think so many of us think of crazy things and we're like, but it could never happen. And so the best thing is to just do it, to try. And then when someone tells you no, then you ask, well, why? And then when they say no again, then you try to figure out, like, well, then how can we work through this together to make it a reality, you know? And so, in a lot of the stuff that I do, yeah, I just have to constantly keep asking why, and, so to get to the point where you push and open and create new pathways of possibility, not just for ourselves, but for our communities, for younger folks that are coming after us. Because if we don't open those doors and kick a bunch of this stuff down for them, they're gonna have a harder time.
Well, I think a common thing I'm seeing on stage is just the idea of collective building or creative ecosystems, creating community. And with the survival toolkit, I think that we need as many different, as Cannupa said, options, networks, opportunities as we can get. So I think with Ma's House, I'm hoping that it's not a unique thing. I think I want to see as many spaces like this as possible throughout the country. so that if we help an artist, we can refer them to other spaces, other networks, and as Lupe said, spaces of healing, spaces of hopefully creating more artists who are believing in themselves, being able to create and envision better futures.
So we're going to open it up for